Hi, good morning everyone. I am so excited to be here talking at Black Hat and talking about the anatomy of a cybersecurity professional. Now, despite that amazing introduction, this will be a G-rated conversation about the power skills, the soft skills that we need to bring as cybersecurity professionals to be the most impactful that we can within our organization. As a show of hands, how many people here are CISOs or serve that function within their organization? Smattering of hands. And keep your hands up for a minute. How many of you, when you were a child or younger, said, when I grow up, I want to be a CISO? Oh, there is a hand at the back. You, sir, need help. Now, that's maybe a little bit of an unfair question because for a lot of us, including myself, CISO didn't really exist when I was a child. But nonetheless, I can't make this work. Let's try this again. There we go. When I was young, I wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. I lacked some of the necessary requirements. I discovered I was no good at ninjutsu, and no matter how hard I tried, I just was never going to be a turtle. So I moved on and decided that when I grew up, I wanted to be a transformer. But that was probably aspirationally too high. Optimus Prime is an incredible leader, and I still look up to him today, and I model my leadership after him. But I was never going to have the ability to transform and adapt to myself like he does. But then, when I was younger, and the first serious profession that I thought I would like to be is a fighter pilot. I mean, who wouldn't want to be Tom Cruise? He's over 60 now, and he's still amazing. He's doing his own stunts. He has the skin of a 30-year-old, and his run is next level. And my father was in the Australian Air Force, so I grew up on an airbase when I was young. I was around pilots, I was around planes. I thought I'd love to be a pilot. But then one of the most transformational things in my life happened when I was around 10. My father brought me home a programming book, a book on QBasic. I don't know how many people here remember QBasic. I think I'm probably dating myself a little bit here. But he brought me a book on QBasic when I was in grade 5, and I fell in love with programming. And a year or so later, one of my friends gave me a really popular game on floppy disk. And I loved playing the game. But when you put I'm not going to say the name of the game because I don't want to get in trouble for the rest of this story. But when you put the game in and you went to play it, it first of all asked you to enter a code. And that code came from the manual that you had with the game. And the manual was around 100 pages long. And it was all written in black writing on dark brown paper so that you couldn't photocopy the manual. And that was one of the original forms of copy protection. My friend gave me a copy of the game and took the manual back, so I couldn't play it. But I was fascinated with programming, and I loved looking at the code of this game in a hex editor. And I didn't understand the code. I didn't even know I was looking at binary. I didn't know I was looking at assembly. It was just a weird set of hieroglyphics. But I noticed within that code, all of the codes that were in the manual were at the end of that file. And so I had no idea what I was doing, but I wondered, what would happen if I edit this file, zero it all out, and save the file? So I tried it. Saved the file, and I ran the game, and discovered that I no longer had to enter the codes. I could just hit enter, and the game would start. And when I distributed that back to my friends at school, and the adoration and the infamy that I received, I found my true life's passion. When I grew up, I wanted to be a hacker. How many people here have children, by the way? I'm just wondering. A couple of hands, quite a few, most people. The first few slides are probably a testament to watching your child's media input, because my entire life's direction has been directed by the movies that I watched when I was a young kid. So just keep that in mind. So when I grew up, I wanted to be a hacker. But there wasn't a career path for a hacker. You can't go to hacker school. You can't put up your sign as a hacker, especially not in the 90s. So instead, I did the next best thing, and I started a small programming company. Nothing to write home about, nothing amazing, a couple of employees. But I learned some really important skills. I learned that I didn't get money unless I delivered a result. But I had to pay my employees, I had to pay my rent, I had to pay my taxes. And so I learned the urgency of delivering a product and being successful. I also learned a lot about cybersecurity. I learned about SQL injections, learned about spam and DDoSes and how to protect against them. And sometimes I ended up on the other side of that equation, and I played around with SQL injections, and I played around with other elements, which led me eventually to end up in my second job within the Australian Department of Defence. And that's when I really started to learn a lot about cybersecurity. I learned about reverse engineering, exploit development, a lot about offensive cyber, and I was fortunate enough to end up running a lot of the capabilities that Australia developed for offensive cyber and for the mission and intelligence. And it was a hugely rewarding job. But more importantly, I also learned how to write a good decision brief, how to send messages to your seniors about the importance of a decision, the reason a decision was being escalated to them, what the pros, the cons was, who had the responsibility for making it, and what the impact would be if they didn't. And I took that with me into my career. I progressed, and then came Coupang. You may not have heard of it. It's a South Korean e-commerce company. Think sort of Amazon, Netflix, Uber, that sort of thing. And I was employed as a head of red team. And that was a great job for me. I love being in the offensive side of cybersecurity. I still did not ever want to be a CISO. CISO is the defensive work. It's the hard job. Every CISO I'd ever met, stressed, looked tired, was responsible and blamed for things that they couldn't control. I loved being on the offensive side of cybersecurity. It's kind of like in a game of football or soccer. You know, the goalie has to block every goal, but you've only got to get past once to score. And so I never thought I'd want to be a CISO. I went to Coupang as head of red team. And in the mornings, I'd often walk around. And you can see on the screen behind me, there's the delivery box. And as you walk around Korea, there's hundreds or thousands of little mum and dad restaurants in every street, every alley. And in the morning, they would all have coupon boxes stacked high, because Coupang does 6 a.m. morning delivery. And I discovered that these people, these small businesses, these mums and dads, they depended upon the deliveries that Coupang provided to run their businesses, that we were part of something much larger than just the e-commerce company. And I realized that security was an integral part of ensuring that those packages got delivered. Because if there was a massive data breach, if there was ransomware, if there was a big PII disclosure, those packages, those fresh food, wouldn't show up the next morning, and tens of thousands of Korean businesses would be impacted for the worse. After we IPO'd, the CISO who was running Coupang and had done an incredible job of getting Coupang's information security to a point where we could get past IPO, he decided to move on. And there was an opening. And that's when I realized I want to be a CISO, because I wanted to make sure that those packages kept getting delivered. But I thought to myself, what do I bring to that role? I've got technical experience, I understand cybersecurity, but what is at the heart of being a CISO? And so that's just very quickly what I want to share with you today. 4 thoughts about the attributes, the anatomy that makes a CISO, and by extension, the anatomy of a cybersecurity professional. Number 1 is you need to be focused on enabling the mission. When I first started with Coupang, the vision statement of our information security organization was effectively secure Coupang. And that makes sense, that sounds reasonable. It's not a bad mission statement for an information security company, information security organization within a company. But I wanted to change it. And so I changed our vision statement and our focus from securing Coupang to enabling Coupang securely. And that may be a pedantic, there may be sort of a bit of a nuance in there, but the reason that I did that is I wanted all of my staff to know that we were focused on enabling Coupang first. Of course we had to secure it, we're the information security organization. But the best way to secure a computer, as I'm sure any of you here would know, is to turn it off, put it in a box, fill the box with concrete, put the box with concrete into the ocean, maybe put some sharks around it with some lasers. You can secure a computer like that and it will be impenetrable. But it'll also be utterly useless. You need to be able to understand the mission. You need to understand the business goals. And you need to align the security organization so that it's moving the same direction as the rest of the organization. And post-IPO, my biggest observation of the relationship between the information security organization and the rest of Coupang was that it was very adversarial. The security organization was perceived as being the no police. We disallowed everything. We were slow with our reviews. We were out of sync with the developers, according to them. The information security organization had a different perspective. But there was a misalignment of what we were trying to achieve, because the information security organization was focused solely on ensuring that the security was paramount, and the rest of the developers were focused on delivering with grit. They were trying to get their product out there as quickly as they could, and we were standing in their way. But when we took the time to understand the mission of Coupang and what all these developers were trying to do, and when we look at the outcomes that we're trying to collectively achieve, we can align ourselves with that, and we can make appropriate security decisions to ensure that those outcomes can be met with security in mind. And that's not a major change in technology. That's not rolling out a new tool or buying a new platform. That's about the way that your team looks at the problems that they're dealing with. When they're looking at a code review or they're looking at a review of a new system, it's not a security-only review. It's a review of the system and the outcomes that it's trying to achieve, and how we make sure that security is a part of that system. So a great CISO is always playing a balancing game between what's good for security, what's good for business, and aligning them, that they don't have to be contradictory. The next point is risk identification. A lot of people think the role of an information security organization is to eliminate risk, or at the very least to minimize risk. And there's some validity in that, but step number one is to be able to identify your risk. If you don't understand the risks, you can't quantify them, you can't evaluate them, and more importantly, you can't make a decision about whether or not you want to accept the risk or not. And when I talk about risk, I'm not just talking about a risk in the sense of a cybersecurity risk. It's a risk to the business objective. If there's a data breach, again, the business stops happening. That's a risk to the business. It's not an information security risk. And so you identify the risks. You evaluate the risks against the threat that it presents to the business. What's the likelihood? What's the impact? What about the risks you haven't considered? You're so busy fixing these risks that you may have missed a risk that you haven't even identified yet. There's one-size-fits-all solutions to getting information about all of your vulnerabilities. We know about all the scanners. We know about all of the tools, all of the information that you can glean from security scanners, vulnerability assessments, external penetration testing. But how do you take all of that raw data and how do you turn it into information that allows you to accurately map out, here's my organization, here's what it's trying to achieve, here are the risks, and here is where security can either accept or mitigate or reduce these risks to ensure that the company keeps running. To do that, you have to be data-driven. You have to ensure that you have observability across your network and traceability of where your data is flowing. And that's not easy. And there's 100 vendors out there that will sell you solutions that help do that. And I encourage you all to go and talk to them. But ultimately, you can have log ingestion, vulnerability scanners, CTI, SBOMs, all of those solutions, but they're just data. How do you feed that all in together as the CISO, as the information security organization, to generate meaningful information that you can present to your seniors to make meaningful decisions about addressing risk that is real and imminent to your company? The third attribute that I think a CISO should exemplify is strong communication. And maybe it's because I still like to feel that I'm a hacker. I view this as being a strong social engineer, but really it's about forming meaningful and real relationships with the other VPs, the other stakeholders in your organization, and also externally. You need to influence the other leaders to care about security. And the way that you do that is you don't talk to them about security. You talk to them about their objectives and their outcomes. You show them that you understand what they're trying to do and that these outcomes are at risk because of a security issue. And I find that when you frame the problem like that, A, they're going to listen because now you're talking about their objectives, not your objectives. And B, they're going to be more aligned with what you're saying. They're going to be receptive to it. They're going to hear what you're saying. And in my experience, almost all of the VPs in my organization, when I share with them the risks in this format, they're more conservative than I am. They're more worried about the risks. They often come up with novel and unique ways to mitigate those risks that I would never have considered because they're the expert in their domain. They know their source code. They know all of the levers that they can pull. They sometimes have ways to get rid of that risk without even involving information security. They self-moderate. And there are times now when I'm going to my VPs and I'm saying to them, it's okay, you can do this. Like, this is an acceptable risk. And they're now looking at security as being a risk to their objectives. I'm no longer a roadblock stopping them from achieving their objective. I'm now assisting them in getting to their objective. But the last attribute, and probably the most important one, is to be the solution, not the problem. Security is so often presented as the problem, and we go to the rest of our organization and we tell them about the security problem that they have, and we tell them they need to fix it. Sometimes you have to do that. There are times when you've got to say, this is just not going to happen in our organization. It's too risky. But not engaging with risk, it's a safe solution for a CISO. No CISO ever got sued by any government organization for saying no to risk. But you also are saying no to the company achieving their results. And that is not being an effective CISO. That's not being an effective cybersecurity professional. Most of the challenges that my company faces and your company faces, they're common. All of us are facing the same challenges. Every presentation up here that I've been listening to resonates with me because the same things are happening and the same discussions are happening in Coupang. Should we use ChatGPT? Can we have local admin access? Why can't I access my private Gmails at work? All of those conversations happen in every company. So use the networking at locations like this. Use benchmarking of your peers and the wider experience that everybody in this room represents to bring the best solutions and promote those back to your company. Security by design, it's not just a buzz phrase. Help the organization by giving them secure building blocks that they can quickly and easily build upon so they deliver their results quicker and it's already vetted, it's already approved by security, so you're no longer the roadblock. Make sure that your policies describe how you want things done, not just what not to do. You don't want to just set a bunch of rules. You want to help people actually achieve this in an easy way. And anticipate where your company's heading. There's been so much talk about AI and generative AI in this conference. Maybe your company's not using it yet, but they're going to be. So anticipate that. Work out the technologies they're going to be moving towards. Figure out the best path to get there so that when they come to you and it's an urgent priority that we start using Gen AI, you already have a path in place and you become part of the solution, not part of the problem. Now, finally, you need to build a strong team, right? A CISO cannot do it all. If you are the single point of failure for information security in your organization, then you've already failed because you can't take a break, you can't take a rest, and you can't come to great conferences like this. You need strong lieutenants, and a willingness to delegate to them. Create a team with a strong mixture of skills, engineering, policy, IR, crisis management. One of the best pieces of advice I ever received when I was in defense and we get personality profiles was a list of my strengths and my weaknesses. And some of those weaknesses I had to work on. I suck at difficult conversations. I had to learn how to have them with my staff. But I got some really good advice about a lot of them. Don't try to focus on your strengths. Don't try to focus on your weaknesses. Lean into your strengths. Do what you're good at. And recruit people to complement and compensate for where you're weak. If you're a strong technical person, don't hire lots of technical people. Hire the people that complement and do the policy, do the risk management and the GRC that you don't know how to do. Build a team that's larger than any of those people, just like some transformers become larger robots and more powerful together. Identify your weaknesses, find people who can complement your strengths, communicate strongly with your external stakeholders, know how to identify the risks, accept or mitigate the risks accordingly, but most importantly, understand where your business is heading, your business's objectives, and always frame security as being an enablement to ensure that those objectives are met. If you do that, That's what I believe is at the heart of any good CISO or information security professional. Thank you so much for your time. This has been an incredible conference. I'm happy to take questions later, but have an amazing day.